Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Just a quick shout out to the T5 peeps: Bob the Dragon, Crab Lobster, Datamagnet, DuckMachine, Mezec, Try Again 95, Feudic Jarl, Astraya the Dreamer, Casper Arnholtz, Maxwell, Ithilia, Meridian 117, and Jordan Buxbaum. Thank you very much. Story number 1. The Life Eaters, written by Faulty Logic Engine. Winds whipped against Braxima's leaves as he strode as fast as his roots could carry him. Faster! Come on, faster, please! But it was no use. Every cell in his body screamed out for rest, shooting pain through every branching limb and tendril. His pseudo-heart beat harder, and his eyes glanced at his pursuer. He didn't seem tired, or even concerned as it approached. Its body was composed of a thin, furred cuticle layer covered in knotted muscle, wide-shaped eyes that scoured the surrounding terrain for its horrendous food source. Every step that animal made seemed so effortless to the creature. Braxima commanded his roots to move, but they could not obey longer. His eyes locked onto the quadruped as his maw filled with blunt-crushing implements opened up and enveloped his form. He could only watch and scream. Then he felt his legs respond. He careened forward onto the cold metal floor of his bedroom as his roots pulled him away from the Life Eater. Bedding soil was thrown across the room as he scrambled to get away from the phantom threat. 12 simple eyes focused on the safety of the room around him. The Life Eater wasn't real. Another nightmare. Braxima's tendrils snaked out and grappled with the furniture around him and ponderously pulled him back into his roots. A quick glance at his chronometer told him that it was still very early in the morning. How unfortunate. He didn't try going to sleep again, not with his mind racing as fast as it was right now. He would rather not start first contact with a new species while sleep-deprived, but he apparently had no say in the matter. A melodic sigh escaped his vocal valves. Why did he have to ask Rolu about her homeworld? Braxima was a Karaku. Much like 12 of the 19 Federation members, his kind fed on light. Their worlds were peaceful, monochrome gardens of life, and over a billion years they evolved sentience. The other 7-member species were only a little different. 3 of them fed on the reactive chemicals in the atmosphere of their planets, while 3 others could somehow feed on rocks. Rolhu was something else. She was from a species 19, the Olarian. They were not plantoids, fungoids, or lithioids. They were animals. Their world was home to the heterotrophs, Life Eaters. Thankfully, her kind diverged from the Life Eater ancestors by forming a symbiotic relationship with the Argi. The Olarian were light feeders, orthothrobs like him, but the story she told, Braxima shivered. His species never experienced predation. It was not in their instincts to react to something coming to kill him because they simply didn't need to. The Karaku did not have any organisms that ate the living on their world, and yet he developed a feeling he should never have known. Braxima had to borrow Rolhu's words for the alien sensation. Fear. That existential dread of seeing the thing that actively sought your destruction. Rolhu's kind evolved surrounded by Life Eaters. She spoke of the creatures that existed in the waters her species resided in, great swimming creatures with conical teeth that could easily shatter Orient's shells, carapace things that stalked the seafloor for small beings to cram into serrated gullets, camouflaged beasts waiting to snatch you from the water, and it was too much for him. The idea alone was terrifying. Rolhu spoke of differences between them and the monsters, of carnivores and herbivores. Of course, the Life Eaters were horrible enough to feed upon each other, too. The Orion's emergence onto the galactic stage had spawned a great deal of worry. Life Eaters were an existential threat to every other sentient life form. As the years went by, more and more life-seeded worlds were found. Again and again, monstrous Life Eaters had come to evolve on them. If there was one saving grace, it was that no sentient Life Eater had ever evolved. And even if such an aberration were to come into being, it would surely destroy its kind in some war of annihilation in their brutal survival of the fittest ecosystem. Space-sparing life-eaters are a common joke, or perhaps a horror story. If such an impossibility became a reality, hell itself would surely be unleashed upon the universe. But it was impossible, as sure as 1 + 1 = 2. Life-eaters were too malicious to make it to the stars. It doesn't stop at the concept of such a nightmare scenario from haunting his dreams, however. Raxima pushed the thoughts aside as his stomata opened wide to let him breathe deep. "I'll get a stimulant drink and keep me awake then," he decided. He was going to be part of the party that would initiate contact with the newest discovered sentient species. They had precious little data to work off, but they had a name for them at least. His mind had to be sharp and his demeanor as welcoming as possible. Tomorrow, he would be one of the first people to ever meet sentient species number 20. The humans. End of story. Story number 2. ETAA, written by Admiral Marsupial 3. We were discovering hyperspace travel, while the humans were still hitting each other with rocks. We are the ETAA, one of the origin species of the Galactic Systems Council. Over millennia, we have shaped the galaxy and its politics. We have guided and sometimes beaten down countless races in an attempt to maintain the galactic community. And human, parental, and pack-bonding instincts effected a bigger change than any one action, war, or decree had accomplished in 100,000 years. The Extraterrestrial Adoption Agency. This one idea changed the galaxy. Not just the enormous effect that it had on humanity's expansion, but the change that expansion had on the thinking of other species. With even some of the more isolationist species opening up diplomatic relations with new races for the first time in eons. The other races were suspicious at first. Why would anyone willingly take in the unwanted and orphaned offspring of others of their same race, let alone those of an entirely different species? Everyone else treated them as a burden, an unwanted responsibility to most. Some even forced them into indebted servitude to repay the generosity of society. And in some places, they weren't even treated that well. Some of the poorer races were the first to accept the offer, happy to get the burden off for the already struggling economies. The humans didn't realize how closely these adoptions were watched, many suspecting that they would be made into brainwashed spies or taken away for experiments. But they weren't. They were raised and looked after in human society, treated as equal and the same, with a few adjustments where needed, as any other human. Others began accepting for various reasons, some for the same reason as the first, happy to get rid of the burden they could do without. Some out of guilt, some for their underhanded reasons. It hadn't gone smoothly. Some humans were xenophobic, as any other race, and it had taken a fair amount of government money to help integrate them into human society, which had put a strain on their economy. And some of the galactic rivals, such as the Kylev, wanted to add to that pleasure, sneaking in what they considered to be defective young, ones that wouldn't have made it past the first few breaths if the humans didn't take them. Amy Miller was the first to make the rest of the galaxy take note. 11 Earth years after the first adoptions, she was a Tefean by birth, but there was a fast-maturing insectoid race and Amy was already studying at Oxford University while only 13 years old. She made the final breakthrough for hyperspace travel. From FTL travel to hyperspace in travel in 70 years was unheard of. It had taken even the quickest of the origin species the equivalent of 150 to 300 years. The Tafians definitely didn't have it. It built up slow over the next few years. The Hyrule rock star reached number 1. He would eventually be the first non-human in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rakul became the elected government representative. The Lawan became a major corporate CEO. A disabled Kalev, becoming a member of the very exclusive Galactic Trade Guild, raised a few surprised eyebrows on her original homeworld, where the guild was well respected, and raised a few smug smirks on her new homeworld. Then they kept coming, and in bigger numbers. human corporations suddenly made big inroads into the galactic economy. Humanity's already quick scientific advancement exploded, and their art and culture exports were in high demand. Almost all areas of human society were experiencing a massive boom period. And while the humans were still the majority of those pushing that expansion, there were a fair few non-humans at the forefront too, and almost all of them led teams that had at least minor alien involvement. That is when we finally worked out the human paradox. How such a chaotic species that managed to split into 2,000 groups on just one planet was coherent enough to advance to the galactic stage and spread amongst the stars without descending into anarchy. They use their chaotic nature. Some friendly races will collaborate from time to time, hoping that the different way of thinking, a brain that functions slightly different, will give either side an insight that they wouldn't have had on their own. The humans can do that with themselves. I've seen one human even do that on their own. Don't get me wrong. If the answer is intelligent and logical with the information available, we beat the humans every time. But for finding those answers that you don't have all the information for the ones that need the almost crazy idea that looks so simple after, the humans put it off way too many times for it to be luck by now. All those hundreds of groups of men, hundreds of ways of looking at every problem. They will think of approaches that will take the combined effort of 3 or 4 other races. What everyone else saw as a burden just gave the humans even more ways of looking at a problem, gave their society more ideas, and humans are dangerous when given ideas. So are some non-humans when raised by humans, it turns out. When my family group suggested that we adopt a quill, I will admit I was apprehensive. We had raised 4 offspring that we can be proud of. We know how to raise an ETAA, and what if the bond didn't form? I know they said that it's effective, but we don't form parental or lack bonds with other species naturally. On an ethical level, I was worried about what to do if one or more of our group didn't take to the infant. I was eventually convinced to go along with it, as all 3 of the females said that they weren't going through with carrying another child, and Chloe, the other male, didn't feel strongly enough to risk annoying them. I had the hormone treatment and took part in the suggested bonding activities, designed to replicate the parental instincts humans naturally have. And I have to admit, looking down at him now, asleep in his nest, you couldn't change my mind for any price. Just like any of our children, as it should be. Who knows, maybe he'll be the ETAA's first Amy Miller. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.